road right away, I made my choice. And I took a two-wheeler, I was tired of my own voice. You could beat on the northern plains, and I just rolled that power on. Well, I was macking off sick, I stopped into a bar to have a brew.
Good evening, I'm Lou Diamond, your host for the show. I'm a practicing attorney here in Staten Island, and we're getting close to our 30th year that we're doing this show, and it's always been a pleasure. And tonight more so because I have a lifelong, well, not lifelong, but it's a lifelong of my practice friend on the show, who's probably the leading expert on the topic tonight, which is elder law. And it seems to be a thing that every time you turn the TV on lately, there's some politician looking to change something, or there's a new law, and it affects more and more people here in Staten Island as people are living longer, and we're facing things that we didn't face 30 years ago in Staten Island. So tonight I'm really happy to introduce Jack Stern.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And there's no finer person for you to be educated on things that, at one way or another, are going to affect you and everybody in your family. Elder law encompasses so many different areas that, you know, it's hard to do in an hour, but we're going to try and touch on the major ones. And these are things that affect not you, but the generations that follow you. So without further ado, it's good to see you again.
My pleasure.
We don't get a chance to see each other anymore.
Not often enough.
Why don't we start off and explain the basics?
Sure. People come to me for two different reasons related to elder law. And many times the people that come to me are not the elderly themselves, but it's their children. Right? And there are two reasons that people will come to see an elder law attorney. The first reason is that they want to get their affairs in order. They want to make sure they have a will and other documents along those lines. So they're concerned about if they die, who's going to inherit their property, are they going to have to deal with estate taxes, are the kids going to have to deal with these problems? And they want to smooth things over so that it goes easy transition to their children. The other reason they come to me is protection of their assets. They've all heard about if they get sick and they have to go into a nursing home, that the nursing home is going to take their house and take their money and take everything from them, and they don't want to see that. They've worked their whole life, 50, 60 years in some cases, to put together these assets, and they want to make sure it goes to their children, and they want me to help them make sure that happens.
What are the areas, like you're saying, you know, keeping the house or keeping the asset and everything?
Sure.
Is what we refer to as the look-back law.
Okay.
Why don't we see how that applies to the families and...
Absolutely. Right. The look-back law in New York is it's a little confusing.
And it was just changed recently.
Yes. Right. But see, in New York is a very liberal state as far as Medicaid is concerned. We have two Medicaid programs here. We have Medicaid for institutional people, and then we have what's called community-based Medicaid. And people don't realize that for community-based Medicaid, we can basically qualify somebody with a look-back of 30 to 60 days. Right? The whole look-back law that people hear about, and everybody hears about, it's now 5 years. It used to be 3 years going back a while.
Right.
Now it's a 5-year look-back. And what that means is that if you're going into an institution, into a nursing home, and you're going to want Medicaid to pay for your stay in that nursing home.
And cover everything.
Medicaid covers everything. Now, just so you know, the average cost of a nursing home stay in New York City is about $16,000 a month. Medicaid pays about $12,000 a month, but you get everything. But if they're going to do that, then the Medicaid looks back at your financials for the last 5 years. And they want to know, what have you transferred out of your name? And if you've transferred assets out of your name, then it's possible that they're going to say, we want those assets back, and we want you to spend those assets before we pay you.
As if you transferred them to your children in lieu of a sale to a stranger.
Right.
That, you know, and to circumvent.
Right. If it's a transfer without valid consideration.
Right.
If you sold a house for what it's worth, if you have a $500,000 house and you sold it for $500,000, then now you have the money, and that's all right. But if you've given things away. Now, there are certain transfers that are allowed, and that's something that most people don't realize. One of the most classic ones is if somebody's going into a nursing home and they're married and their spouse is staying in the community, you're allowed to transfer that house to your community spouse, and there's no penalty and no look-back period on that. Approximately $875,000 worth of value in a house
Right.
got transferred.
What about deeds in lieu of foreclosure?
Well, deed in lieu of foreclosure is a deed that you're giving without consideration.
Right.
But there's a reason for that, because you owe more money on
You
the
owe
house
more
than it's
money
worth.
than it's worth.
So you're not giving something away for less than its fair value.
Right.
And that's what Medicaid is looking for. The other transfers that are permissive is if you have a child that's been living with you in your home, and that child has helped with your care. And that's a very loose standard.
It's tough to prove.
Well, but usually an affidavit from the person.
Yeah.
What's that mean? They made your doctor's appointments. Maybe they did some grocery shopping for you.
Cleaned
They
the
helped you with
house.
medication, things like that. If you have that and that child's been living in your home with you, then you can transfer the house to that caregiving child, and that will not be a disqualifying transfer.
Which heretofore wasn't allowed.
Right.
You know, that's one of the changes, but they didn't raise a flag and announce it.
That's right. That's right.
That's
Then
what we
there's
have you here for tonight.
I try to educate people whatever I can. Other things that are allowed is you can prepay your funeral without a disqualification. And a very little known fact, not only can you prepay your funeral, but you could prepay your children's funerals as well.
That's something I didn't even know.
Right, so I had a client come in, and she had 6 children.
Okay.
And she was going on Medicaid, and she had a lot of assets. We paid over $100,000 in prepaid funerals.
Which is why, to interrupt you, I always tell people, when you have a legal problem, go to the best. All right? Because you're going to get what you pay for in this world. All right? But you're going to lose for what you don't pay for. And that's the point I try to stress.
You and I spoke earlier about going to discount and what you get.
I get a phone call from somebody on a murder case, and I call them tire kickers. You know, I've been asking, well, you go all the way down to D. You know, I said, you might as well hang up now.
Yeah.
Right, because you can't afford me. If you've been, on that.
Right.
And then when you hear the price that was quoted, I said, I'll say a prayer for you tonight. This is about the best that you could afford for me. All right, you're not in a position where price should be a question.
Yeah.
Talk to your family. Talk to people, but get the best that you can afford.
I have a saying, you don't always get what you pay for. When you come to my office, you get more.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So all of these things are transfers that can be made without imposing a look-back period. But the look-back period you're asking about is the 5 years if you're going into a nursing home setting.
Right.
Most people don't realize if you're staying in your home, you can apply for Medicaid, you can get aids in the house, you can get walkers, wheelchairs, all these things, medicines for $1 to $4 per prescription, and that'll all be covered by your Medicaid if you just do your proactive planning. And all you have to do is do it 30 to 60 days ahead of time.
It's amazing. I mean, I've gone through a lot of personal injuries in my life. Like I've broken everything. Yeah. And lately I've had a lot of them. And I take something like 22 pills a day lately.
Wow.
All right, and they give you a statement at the end of the month, from your insurance company and Medicare, this is what was spent this month, I rattle,
Staggering.
Staggering, but the doctors, they don't care what the other doctor prescribed. They're going to prescribe, but they want to prescribe to protect themselves.
That's right.
All right, whether or not they're adverse to each other, But as long as the insurance company approves it, the pharmacy's not going to say, well, I wouldn't recommend that you take these two together because they want to get paid.
Right.
So you're caught in the middle.
Yes.
Prescription is one of the biggest problems in this country.
And one of the things you're talking about is you go to your doctors. One of the things that people worry about is, well, if I go on Medicaid, can I still go to my doctor?
Pick my doctor.
Right. And the answer is, in most cases, you can. Because if you're on Medicare and for whatever reason you decide to apply for Medicaid, you still keep your Medicare.
Right.
And as long as your physician is a physician that accepts Medicare,
Right.
you continue to go to that same physician. And so you have both insurances in place.
Which is an important thing, because, I mean, as you get older, and if you've kept the same physician, he's well aware of your history
That's right.
and everything, and you're comfortable with him. And it's not like you have to explain everything. I walk around with a folder of all my prescriptions, because every time you go to a doctor for anything or go to a test and everything, say, write down your prescriptions. And one of the things I have is I have a broken thumb. I can't write that well. All right, so I have my list. Just photostat this and see attached, because the list is that long of my prescriptions. I can never fit them in to begin with.
But see, the younger people today don't have a list like that. They keep everything on their phone, and they just email it over.
But they want you to fill it out by hand on that sheet.
Yes.
And sign it. And so that's why I say just attach it, and I'll sign both. And,
Right.
and that's just even for tests. You go down to the hospital for radiology and stuff like that. Even for tests. I mean, what does it matter if you're giving me an MRI what I'm on?
I'm sure for the doctors it does.
For them, they want to make sure they're protected.
That's right.
They're not worried about my health inside the MRI chamber. They're worried about their malpractice insurance. And there's a lot going on in the hospitals today. That,
Oh, sure.
Well, so now somebody comes in your office. What's your most common question?
Most common question, if they come in, let's say, elder law, the first thing they say is, I want to put my affairs in order. So the first thing I'll ask them is, do you have a will? And if they do, when we make the appointment, we tell them to bring any papers with them they have. If they have a will, I tell them I want to see the will. I'm going to look it over. If the will is fine the way it is, and there's been no major changes in their life that would require the will to be redrafted, then I'm going to tell them, your will's great. You don't have to touch it. Everything's wonderful on it. If, on the other hand, the will was done 25 years ago, and people that are named in the will are no longer there, or they have executors in charge that are dead, or something like that, then we have to redo it.
Right.
When people come to me for a will, we always tell them you need 3 documents. Complete package is 3 documents. First thing you have is the will. The will provides for what happens to all your assets when you pass away. The second thing that I tell people they need is a healthcare proxy. Now, a healthcare proxy is a document that says that in the event you need medical care and you are not able to communicate your wishes to the doctor,
Who's the person that can make the
who's going to
decision?
make those decisions?
Yeah.
Stroke, coma, Alzheimer's,
You don't want any heroic.
motorcycle accidents.
You don't want any heroic efforts made to keep you alive.
Right. Well, then the next thing, when I do a healthcare proxy, with the healthcare proxy, we also do a living will.
Right.
The living will is instructions. I want this, but I do not want this. Right. And then the third document is called a durable power of attorney. And what I explain to people, a power of attorney is a very powerful document. I tell them it's like creating a clone of yourself. When someone signs a power of attorney, they are giving that person, that agent that they named, the power to do anything that they can do.
They walk your shoes.
Exactly. They could go to your bank and close your bank account. They could open a bank account. They could cash a check. They could sell your house. They could mortgage your house.
I've had a lot of criminal cases with phony power of attorneys, which was the craze a few years back,
Yes.
as you know.
Yes.
And
power of attorney is used to sell people's houses.
right.
illegally.
And it's amazing how little people look beyond it
Right.
to verify it. Especially like you're saying, you have a title company. Title company should check.
But they should.
Because power of attorney is a one piece of paper with a notary stamp on it.
That's right. That's right.
And if it says all my power,
Well, yeah.
that's a very dangerous position to be in.
The typical power of attorney in New York is what's called a durable power of attorney.
Right.
Durable power of attorney means that it stays in effect even if the person that gave it becomes incapacitated or incompetent.
Which is why you do it.
Exactly. You do in anticipation of that. Now, going back to what we were talking about, nursing homes and things like that, and look-back periods, power of attorney is a very important thing. Because if someone's going into a nursing home, we can still save some of their assets, depending on what their situation is, even at the doorstep of the nursing home. We'll call it doorstep planning. But in order to do it, we have to be able to make transfers. If they're going into the nursing home and they are incapacitated at that time,
Somebody's got to transfer it
someone
out.
has to do it for them.
Also, with the new tax laws, real estate tax laws,
Yes.
somebody's got to make the application to fight the increase in the tax
Right.
All right? If you're incapacitated, then the person with the power of attorney can step in there and save the estate
That's
and
right.
everything.
Yes.
Maybe $5,000, $6,000 or more $1,000 a year.
Now, you mentioned real estate.
Right.
One of the most common things that people are concerned about is, I want to protect my house. How do I protect my house? And that's something we do quite often in my office. One of the things that we do, and some people talk about a trust. People come into me and say, I need a trust. And very often I say to them, after talking to them, you don't need a trust. We have a much simpler way.
Well, why don't we stop for a second and explain what a trust is?
Sure. A trust is a situation where you set up, it's sort of like creating a corporation. And it's a pot, and you put assets into that pot. And a trust can protect assets from Medicaid. So that look-back period we were talking
Right.
about, you could start that clock running by putting assets into a trust.
But there's irrevocable trusts,
Right.
and they're not.
It has to be an irrevocable trust, meaning once you set this up and
It's
once you
done.
put assets in, you cannot touch it. You cannot exercise any control over that anymore.
Which is bad when you have a marriage that may have a possible divorce in the future.
Whether it's yours or your kids.
Right.
Right. Right. So some people don't like that. So one of the things we do to help people save their houses, and it's much simpler, much less expensive than a trust, is if someone comes in, one of the questions I'll ask them, you're living in this house, do you believe that you're going to stay in this house for the rest of your life? If they tell me yes, I tell them, it's not that I'm saying you have to guarantee it to me, but if you believe you're going to stay in this house the rest of your life, then one of the things we'll do is we will transfer the house to your children, but with a very special type of transfer. We don't just give it outright to the children. We give it to them with something called retained life estate. Retained life estate means that while mom and dad are alive, it's their house for all intents and purposes.
Right.
They still pay the taxes on it. It still shows up on their tax return. They keep the insurance. They do everything.
They get the benefit of the
All the
deduction.
benefits, the senior citizens exemption, everything. But when they pass away, it instantly goes to the children. Now, the beauty of this is that the life estate portion of the ownership, which they're keeping, is personal to them. Therefore, Medicaid does not have any interest in that. If you do this transfer, you still have all these benefits, but 5 years after you do it, Medicaid cannot touch the house anymore.
It's invincible.
Right. Now, they get it, and when they pass, it goes to the children. Now, people say to me, well, what happens if I just give it to my kids right now? The problem with that is that one day after you go and the kids do sell the house, they're going to pay
taxable.
huge capital gains
Right.
tax. But if you do it with a retained life estate,
It goes back to the original.
it goes back to the date of death value.
Right.
The IRS says that that is what's called an incomplete gift.
Right.
And since the gift is not completed till mom and dad pass away,
That's the date.
that's the date that it's valued. So if
I've
you
got
bought
a problem
Yeah.
with hurricane, not this one, but the last hurricane. Serena was it?
You mean Sandy?
Sandy
Okay.
did a divorce. Part of the divorce was they had looked to set up a trust and everything, and the house was supposed to be rebuilt. Right?
Okay.
Fine, except for one thing. They rezoned it as a flood area. So the company, we could never get it rebuilt because they wouldn't issue a
A permit, right.
So now here I am, trying to explain to the people, it's not my fault, all right? At the time, that was the law, all right? The company's now, the city rezoned it, all right? They're talking about Manhattan being underwater in 30 years, you know. Told Hill being a dot, you know.
An island.
An island.
Smaller island.
A small island. You know, these are things that you cannot foresee.
Right.
All right, you try to do the best you can, but when something like that, that's an exceptional situation. I live in the Midwest right now, you know,
Oh, terrible flooding.
terrible flooding. I imagine what that did to all the agreements. All right, you know, we don't stop to think about that, but as lawyers, the first thing comes in our mind is the poor gun that wrote up that agreement is getting phone calls all night, you know.
Liability, we worry about that all the time.
But I mean, what you're saying is absolutely the correct way to do it. But there's always that unforeseen thing that can happen, and you have to tell people, you know, this is, as of today, this is the way to do it.
All we can do is work with the rules that we have now.
What we have in front of us.
Right.
And you're going to protect them as best as anybody can protect them with what is the law.
Absolutely.
And you can't say, you can't put a what-if clause in. There's no such thing. You know? Otherwise, it'd be 400 pages long.
And you still will not
Well, you're not
cover
going to
everything.
cover everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and it just cracks me up. The people are still calling me up. What do you want me to do? You want me to go build a house myself on a raft for you? I mean, no, it is what it is, you know. And now they're moving back even further down by Wolf's Pond and everything.
That whole area is becoming, natural area.
Natural area.
Right.
Who would have anticipated that the place that for years was a premier location is now worthless?
One thing I have to say, that's one of the few times the state really did the right thing by people. When their houses got destroyed, the state came in and bought their houses at the value before Hurricane Sandy.
Before the Hurricane Sandy.
Plus a premium on it.
Right.
They gave them a 10% premium, and they paid their closing costs. And then they gave them another, I think, 5%.
But this woman didn't want to move out of that house. She wanted to live there.
Yeah.
I said, my advice is take it and run.
Yeah.
All right? So this thing ends. We have an ending.
Right.
All right? There's a terminal. That's it. No, I want to live there. I want to raise my grandchildren there. But they may not be there.
And she might be the only house left in the neighborhood.
Right. That's the other thing. What are you going to sell it for?
Right.
You know?
That's right.
But what it is, it is.
That's right.
All right. One of the things that we were talking about is, the resources that you can have and still qualify for Medicaid.
Okay.
Because on Staten Island, you have your mom and pop stores, and they've been living upstairs over the store for years, and that changes the nature of the relationship of the business as opposed to the home.
Yes.
You know.
Well, if a person wants to apply for Medicaid for community-based, staying in the community, not going to a nursing home, they're allowed assets of approximately $126,000.
Which is nothing on Staten Island.
No, but remember what I said, the house can go to the community spouse, can go to the other spouse. And the one place that New York State is not very good is on what income they say that you can live on if you're in a community.
Right.
New York State tells somebody that you can live on, I believe the number now is $859 a month.
I remember it being up there in the 800s.
Now, that's not a lot of money.
Especially when you consider going into the store and it costs you $2 for an apple.
Right. So, but what they do is they say anything above that 859, that's called surplus.
Right.
And New York State says, well, you give that surplus to us, and we'll give you all the benefits. But here again, they have another option for you that is fantastic. Instead of giving, let's say someone comes in with an income of $3,000. Instead of having to give the state $2,100 and change, you can apply for and establish what's called a pooled income trust.
That's the one I wanted to get to.
Okay.
Okay. I couldn't think of it, but that was it.
A pooled income trust, I tell my clients all the time when I explain this, you're going to think I'm telling you something that's a scam and not legal, but it is 100% legal. It's disclosed to the government, it's disclosed to Medicaid, everybody, it's on paper. And what it is you apply to set up a trust with a charity. And the charity that we use in my office is something called NYSARC, which is New York State Association for Retarded Children.
Right.
You have nothing to do with the children, and even calling children retarded children today is improper, but that's what their name is.
That's what their name is, and they incorporate under that, and it exists as a...
So what happens is you set up this trust with them. They take a $300 fee to set up the trust.
They have the same thing with Wounded Warriors.
Oh, do they? Same thing, right. So now that $2,100 worth of surplus that you have, instead of giving that to the state, you give that to NYSARC, to the charity. They hold that money in a separate bank account just for you. You submit bills to them, any bills that are in your name, and they will pay those bills.
Right.
They will not pay for alcohol, drugs, firearms.
Right.
They will pay for virtually anything else.
Cars, transportation, doctors.
Tax bills, insurances,
clothing.
A credit card bill, provided that the charges on the credit card bills are. And they will pay that with that $2,100 differential that you have. They take a small fee, and when I say small, based on how much of your surplus there is, it could be anywhere from $50 to maybe $150 a month.
I think there's a cap of like 2.9% or something like that.
Very small number, right. The only downside to it is there's a $300 application fee, And
Which is well worth it if you're in that
absolutely,
position.
right. And any money you do not spend from this trust,
Goes
when you pass away,
Yeah.
then the charity gets.
Yeah.
But most of my clients make sure they spend every month
Yeah.
for what they have.
And if it doesn't, then God bless it. It's going to a good cause.
That's right. Exactly right.
You know, that's
and
how I look
meanwhile,
at
you're
it.
getting your benefits all along the way.
Yeah, like especially the Wounded Warriors. I mean, Judge Brennan. In fact, I have the tape here from the Judge Brennan and I helped set up the Veterans Court.
Uh-huh.
Right? You have kids that go overseas, and they've never done a drug in their life. They're being up 72 straight hours, so they're being forced to take amphetamines and things like that. Now they come home, and they get 2 quick DWIs or something like that, or possessions, and they want to put them in jail. I forget about PTSD and everything, you know. And you know, I talked to Judge Brennan about it. It's not right.
No, it's not.
All right. I had a kid that went into an apartment house exactly like he lived in with his squad. A 14-year-old kid, exactly like his kid brother, watching Grand Theft Auto, just like his kid brother, turns around with an AK-47 and kills his whole squad.
Oh, my God.
So he's got a kid that killed a kid. You think that didn't have an effect on him?
Of course it did.
And now you're force-feeding him amphetamines. And my wife's nephew was a medic over there, you know, and even he was affected by it because he was up 72 hours at a clip.
Sure.
Right? I said, we can't treat these people like a kid on the street corner selling drugs, you know, to make money, or something like that. So then Judge Brennan set up the Veterans Court, and they're taking an allowance, the whole background, and we're getting them help.
Good for you guys.
You know, I mean, there they are protecting our country, serving our country, all right, and being destroyed internally.
And every one of them's a hero.
Everyone is a hero. But they're being destroyed and doing things that they would never have done in real life
Right.
to be there. You just can't get on the boat and come home. It's still with you. And thank God for the Veterans Court. I just did a case today where I shifted it over to the Veterans Court.
Oh.
Because I told the judge, I said, listen, this guy did 6 years. The 2 cops that arrested him each did 4 tours. All right? I got nothing but veterans on this case.
Right.
All right? Nobody wants to see this guy go to jail on a DWI who's never been in trouble before. He needs help.
Definitely.
Right? Because he refused to take the breathalyzer because some idiot told him never take a breathalyzer.
And society has to take care of these veterans.
You got to.
Right.
You got to. I remember going into one of the housing places one night when I lived in New York, and I had a carry permit with a 45, and pulling one of the guys out who owned a good business, but was hooked, you know. And I took him over to the VA hospital. I'm sitting there with him, and he's going, "Woe is me! You know, this is because of Vietnam. You know, I smoked pot over there, and you know, all this. You know." Meanwhile, he's sitting next to a guy who was on his 5th CNI drug, and the other guy next to him has no legs since 1971, and he's going, "Woe is me!" I said, "If you woe is me one more time to me, they're going to put you in intensive care. Forget about them treating you. You're going upstairs, and you're going to register." Yeah, this is before we had all this stuff. I'm talking about 20 years ago. You know.
Right.
And the MP who was standing there just walked away. You know, because he thought I was going to choke the guy. He didn't want to see it. But how do you say this in front of a guy with a 7th CNI dog?
Right.
Yeah, woe was me. I learned how to smoke pot in Vietnam. All right? You got it. Thank God we have these people who are willing to put their lives on the line for us so we can sit here and talk like this.
Absolutely. Anybody who puts the uniform on is a hero.
At the end of the show, I'm going to devote a little bit of time because this is the week before Memorial Day. I usually run the Vietnam War motorcycle run, and I do the Wounded Warrior thing with Judge Brennan. So I'll do that at the end of the show. But all the more reason, like we're saying, you know, these things have to be taken into account.
Absolutely.
You know.
Right.
And then we're also talking about when a person comes to you for a will, Do you believe in joint wills or separate wills if they're married?
I believe in separate wills.
Yeah.
Each one should be done independently. A will is not a complicated thing to do for most people.
And
for
you
the average
refer to each
person.
other in it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And people come to me and they say, well, do I need a will? Who needs a will? They don't know why should they need a will. They say, I'm not a big shot. Why do I need a will? And I basically tell them that, in my opinion, everybody should have a will. When you're a young married couple, you should have a will because you can have children. And in case something happens to the two of them, who's going to raise those children? And if the children are a little older and they're 12, 14, 15-year-old children, at what age are those children going to get the money from your estate if you both pass away? If you don't have a will, it goes to the children at 18. And I don't know about you, but at 18 I wasn't responsible enough to handle a large sum of money. And that's what I tell my
I'm still busy
clients.
getting beaten up by my mother.
So, in that age you need a will. As people get older, they say, well, I don't have children anymore, do I need a will? And I tell them,
Can't hurt.
75% of all wills never go to probate.
Right.
Probate is the process of putting
It's
it
an
into
umbrella.
circuit court. Right. You don't use it, you don't need it. But some people do. They say, well, why? I've taken care of everything. I say, well, what happens if you pass away as a result of medical malpractice or a
Right.
car accident? Somebody's going to want to bring a lawsuit
Right.
on that.
Who's
You want to know
qualified?
who's in charge of that.
Right.
All right. When the other example I give people all the time, they say, everything I have is joint with me and my wife. I said, all right, that's great until you walk into the store, you buy a lottery ticket, and you walk out and you're looking at the lottery
Which just
ticket.
happened.
That's right. And you're walking across the street, get hit by a bus, and the lottery ticket hits that night for $10 million.
Right.
Who gets that $10 million?
Right.
Right. If you don't have a will, then everything gets divided between your spouse and your children,
Right.
which, especially with second marriages today, that
The
may not be
expression
exactly
that
what
you
you
can't
want.
disinherit a spouse.
You cannot.
All right, why don't you explain what that means?
All right. Well, New York law, like most states, we have a law that says there's a minimum amount that your spouse is entitled to. Even if you want to give your spouse a zero
In the will.
in the will, your spouse can contest that will and take what's called a right of election. And the right of election in New York is a minimum of $50,000, and it's 1/3 of the balance of your estate if
Right.
you have two children.
Right.
If you have one child,
50.
then it's 50%.
Right.
Of your estate after the first $50,000. So you can't disinherit them.
They say the only stupid question is one you don't ask. So, how long? I know you have to live in this state a certain amount of time to start a divorce. How long do you have to live in New York State before you can file your will here?
If this is your residence, if you've established your residence
Which
here,
is how long?
oh, it could be days.
That's my point.
Could be days.
Because everybody's under the impression it's like a divorce.
No, not at all.
I'm shocked how many people come up to me and say, well, I'm only living here 8 months.
It could be days.
Yeah.
You come to New York, you either buy a house or rent an apartment, you change your mail to come here, you change your driver's license to here, you are a New York State resident. And going back to what we were talking about, Medicaid, and as I said before, Medicaid is New York is a very good state for Medicaid. One day in New York State as a resident, and you can qualify for
That was the
Medicaid
second
in New
question I was
York.
going to ask you. Yeah.
Just one day as a
Yeah,
resident.
people don't realize that. They
Right.
think it's. I went through the 7 feats of Hercules trying to get a driver's license when I moved to New York recently, because they require an original birth certificate. And I don't know if people know that if you're born in the 5 boroughs, then you physically have to go to Manhattan before 8 o'clock in the morning to Ward Street and get a birth certificate. You can't just apply for it.
I didn't know that.
Now, you see, these are things you never know until it hits you.
Right.
All right? So I had to take Uber to Manhattan before 8 in the morning, all right, and spend 3.5 hours to get an original birth certificate. All right? I think we have our first phone call. Hello?
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 Hi, I have a question for Mr. Stern.
All right, speak up just a little bit.
Sure, you mentioned retained life estate. Do both parents have to pass before the children get the benefit?
Yes, if we put the deed into the children's names, but a retained life estate in both parents' names, then yes, both parents have to pass. Now, under the law, the purpose of the life estate is to protect the parents, to make sure that the house can't be sold out from underneath them, that the children cannot mortgage the house or do anything with it. But the other benefit is what we talked about, the tax benefit. So if we put both parents on it, then both parents have to pass, correct?
Okay.
Thanks for the
Follow-up question. The capital gains.
Yes?
Hello?
Did we lose you?
We might have lost you.
Yeah?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. The capital gains effective date, is that based on the parent, based on which parent's death?
Okay, it is based on the second parent to die is the final date. What actually happens is, and this is more of an accounting question than a law question, but what actually happens is they get what's called a step-up in basis. Now, a lot of people do not understand basis. Basis is a very simple concept. And the way I describe it to my clients is, let's say you buy a stock for $10,000, you keep it for 10, 15 years, and then you sell it for $25,000. Your basis is $10,000, and your profit is $25,000 minus $10,000, or $15,000. Well, the same thing works with a house, although it's a simplification. There are more complications with
Yes,
a house.
a lot of
Closing
between,
costs and
right.
improvements and things like that, but we won't get into all that. So what happens is your basis gets stepped up to whatever the value is at the time of death. Now, with both parents, you get a half step-up basis when parent 1 dies, and a second step-up basis when parent 2 dies.
I got it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Overhelped.
Okay.
So, getting back to what we were just talking about, there being no such thing as a stupid question except when you don't ask.
Absolutely.
And not only did I have to go up there because I was born in the 5 boroughs, okay, then I had to go back to motor vehicle, and I had to go there 5 in the morning because they open up at 9, and at 9 o'clock, if you look back, there's 250 people behind you, and there's only 3 people working there, and they're not selected for the fact that they didn't go to Mensa that day. So now, I've 4 trips to motor vehicle to finally get my license because I have my birth certificate and the other stuff. Now, I said, I have a disabled license from New York, Jersey. What do I do for my disabled thing? Oh, you've got to mail this into Long Island City. It's been 3.5 months. I still haven't gotten my disabled placard.
Oh, my God.
All right. Which makes a big difference. The bag I take to court in the morning, weighs about 50 pounds,
You have heavy cases.
Yeah. There's no such thing as, small paperwork in criminal cases today. It's by the pound, The whole motor vehicle concept in New York is, you go to New Jersey, it takes you maybe 15 minutes to register a car, and if you have the letter with you, get your disabled thing, and they hand you the placard. All right? I've been used to that for the last 20 years or so. New York is just, they just make things so different. Now the new laws on marijuana and all that, and what they're selling over the counter, the fact that, like drugs, okay? A question I wanted to bring up is, if you go into this program and they pay for the drugs,
Medicaid. Right.
Are they looking for generic drugs?
Well, they're going to always try and find a generic
Because I don't
drug.
know if you watched 60 Minutes Sunday night.
No, I did not.
All right, one of the problems, and it's in my business, I represent a lot of doctors who get arrested for prescribing Oxycontin and things like that, is that people don't understand that, like, the oil in Mexico is different than the oil in the United States because the dinosaur that died there, that went into the soil, is different than the dinosaur that died in Central America, United States.
Right.
Same thing goes for the fentanyl. All right. Same thing goes for the fentanyl. There's 73 parts to 1 crystal of fentanyl, like DNA, 3 of which are based upon 1 flower. That flower didn't grow in America this year because of the swamp that we have in central United States. So we've been getting that flour from Nigeria and Brazil. Once again, they had different dinosaurs. They have a different soil. That and it's microscopic, like DNA. All you need is one of those to be wrong, and you die in 1 minute.
Oh my God.
So all these kids that are using fentanyl on Staten Island, the death rate is climbing through the ceiling the last 6 months because of the flooding we've had. You know, I try to tell these kids out there, you know, you got to be crazy to use anything, you know, to begin with, especially anything with fentanyl. I think we have another call. You may be standing too close to the television. Now, we can't understand a word you're saying. I don't know if you're standing next to a television or something and there's feedback, but try calling back and we'll get a better connection. But, I mean, people don't realize that, you know.
Sure.
I mean, it's like, you know, 73 chromosomes, you know, in the fentanyl crystal, one crystal, okay? And only one of them has to be wrong, and you die in 1 minute.
I know that there's been a lot of an uptick of fentanyl deaths
It's unbelievable.
Staten Island.
And yet, I have kids getting arrested with it, and I say, well, are you out of your minds completely? I mean, I've never even smoked a cigarette. The only drugs I've ever taken were prescription drugs, and I've taken enough of them because I broke everything in my body you could break at least 7 times. Why? Why? It just has never been part of my psyche, you know. Hello? Hello? I had a lot of problems this week. Two of my friends and I lost my internet. Hello?
Yeah, Lou,
We don't need to yell.
okay. I have a couple of questions I wanted to ask you. I'm watching you. It must be a previous show that you had pre-recorded, and I heard you and your partner talking about a special needs trust. I have 2 children that are diagnosed with comprehension and attention deficit disorder that I have had placed with the state up in Rockland County. And I want to do a special needs trust. Do I have to have start a will first before I do a special needs trust for my son and my daughter?
No, you do not have to have it. Those are 2 separate things. The special needs trust, for the rest of the people listening, is a trust that's set up under a particular statute in New York that says that the money that you put into that trust cannot be used for anything that government benefits would pay for. A special needs trust is also called a supplemental needs trust. And the purpose of it is to supplement government benefits, but not to replace government benefits. If you want to give something to your children now, you set up that trust and you put money into that trust. If, on the other hand, there's going to be nothing going to their name now, then in your will, you should provide for a supplemental or special needs trust to take anything that you want to give those children.
Right.
All right? That answers your question?
All righty. Thank you.
Thanks for the call.
All right, good luck to you.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Interesting.
Thank you for your service. I'm also a veteran, United States Navy, Vietnam era, President Nixon.
Well, let me tell you, you're saying thank you the wrong way. I want to thank you.
That's right.
All right? Okay? There can be no
All right.
there can be no amount of words used to say thank you. But please,
Yes. Oh, I always do. I see a lot of them.
well,
I
please,
see a lot of them.
please accept my thanks.
Oh, yes.
At
Thank
the
you.
end of the
Thank
show, I'm
you.
going to talk about that a little bit, so stay tuned.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
I'm glad he got through.
Yeah, that's very interesting point and important.
It is.
You
It
know.
is.
And not something that's walk through your door that often.
And people don't understand about these things very often. They don't even know that they exist. Right? And I have a provision I put in all my standard wills saying that if I give something, or the person who's making the will, called the testator gives something to a child or a relative or anybody, and you don't know. You write a will now and no one's going to look at it for 5, 7, 10, 15 years, and at the time that the will comes into effect, the person you gave it to is disabled, that whatever you gave them does not go to them. It goes into a supplemental needs trust for their benefit. I put that in all my wills.
Once again, as I say, if you're going to see somebody, see the best.
Thank you.
All right, because I'm not saying that there are other people who may not know that, but I know you do.
Yes.
And that's the important part.
We have many fine practitioners here in Staten Island.
I'm sure we do, but like I said, see the best that you can, and you know how I feel about you.
Thank you. Yeah.
But it's amazing how many people fall into those little exceptions that don't know how to ask the question.
Right. If you don't, like
I said, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask.
Absolutely.
You know.
I tell my clients, I'll never get upset if you ask me a question until you ask me the same question the 4th or 5th time.
29 phone calls the other day for a guy asking me the same question. I'm not on them, and I didn't kill him yet. But people, like the old-fashioned people, were afraid of, you know, when you mentioned to them, you know, we got to make up a will for you. What, you want me to die? That was the old expression, remember?
That's right.
What, you want me to die? You know?
I always tell them, especially my elderly clients when they come in, I said, listen, we're setting up the will, we're taking care of everything now. I want to set another appointment for you. And they say, what do you want? I said, I'm setting an appointment for 20 years from today. I want you to be back here because we're going to go over this and review it.
Yeah, it's all right, this will be our last phone call. Hello? Hello?
Good evening, gentlemen. This is a question about real estate and trusts. We did a reverse mortgage on our home, and because we took the home out of my wife's name, because of some medical conditions she has to deal with, and you know there's a 5-year look back. But we're wondering, and the house is now in my name. In the event something happens to me, what can I do preemptively so that she could stay in the house, or what type of trust could I set up so she would be able to have a roof overhead?
Well, the first thing is I want to point out what we said before. The 5-year look back is only for institutional Medicaid. If you are in a situation where your wife or you need medical assistance and you need Medicaid, but you can stay in your home, then we do not have a 5-year look back. Now, the answer to your question is that if you're concerned about something happening to you and you want your wife to be able to stay in the house, then we can transfer the house with the retained life estate in your wife that we talked about. Now, you've already taken out this reverse mortgage, so the mortgage is now a lien against the house. And like most mortgages, it has a provision in it that says that if you transfer the house, it gives the bank the right to call the mortgage in. So technically, the bank has the right when we do this to say, pay us off. We do not want to be a mortgage on this house anymore, and they can actually foreclose on it. However, in the case of transfers within the family, like we're talking about, it is extremely, extremely rare that a bank will take any action on that. The only time they actually exercise that clause is when a house is sold to a third party. So you can take that house, you could transfer it to your children with a retained life estate and your wife and you, or you transfer it however else you want within the family. And as long as you give your wife a life estate, she will be protected. Of course, the mortgage still has to get paid, but you did say a reverse mortgage. So a reverse mortgage, you don't pay, so that's a different situation.
We're way to the positive side on the reverse mortgage, so
Good.
But that in itself wouldn't be an issue. We're, you know, well ahead, almost 2-to-1 in that
Okay.
case. But my concern is, you know, for her safety and well-being. So I can transfer the deed within the family,
and depending on the institution, they may not decide to call the loan, if I understand you correctly.
Extremely unlikely that they would call them a loan with an inter-family situation like that. Extremely. I cannot honestly remember the last time I saw a bank call a loan on an inter-family situation like that.
Now, can it be done while I'm still alive?
It should be done while you're still alive, absolutely.
Oh, this is why I'm calling the experts.
Okay.
And what type of vehicle, what type of process of paperwork is that called if I should decide to contact you?
It would be a deed, and it would be, depending on your situation, it could be a life estate deed or some other type of deed, but it would be a deed, and it's not a complicated thing to do. I can't tell you exactly what you would need without going into details a little more with you, but it would be a
Understood.
straightforward thing.
Thanks for the phone call.
And thank you very much for your expertise and your time. Greatly appreciated.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
Jack, I want to thank you so much for your expertise and you giving up your time. I know how hard you're working, the hours you put in too. I can't thank you enough. I think it was a valuable show for everybody out there. It would be replayed over and over during the course of the month. So
I thank you for
people
having
check
me.
it. I just want to take a few minutes. This is the week I usually do my pre-Memorial Day thing. I run the Rolling Thunder thing down in D.C. for the Vietnam War with the motorcycles. Unfortunately, most of the people that I have as guests for that unfortunately passed away this year or got very ill, so we didn't do it this year. And I'm unable for the first time to ride this year for injuries, so I just want to tell people that the most important thing you can do is if you see a man or a woman in uniform, is to walk up to them and say the two magic words, thank you. Because without them, you and I wouldn't be here with the
Absolutely.
freedom to have this kind of discussion, and we don't have these laws that protect us. There's a book out now, my cousin, the next top gun pilot, LBJ was warning the North Korea, Vietnamese when we were going to have bombing strikes so there wouldn't be collateral damage. My MIA was a bomber pilot. All right, they were sitting there with MiGs waiting to shoot them down. All right, the truth is coming out now. A general just wrote a book, and it's coming out about all the things that were going on between that and Jane Fonda and all this stuff. To me, there can be nothing worse than disrespecting the uniform for somebody who's serving their country. The day after 4th of July, I walked into the courthouse in the old Taji Street, and I walked past a master gunnery sergeant that had been in the service for well over 20 years, and African-American gentleman. And I stopped, and I turned around, and I put my hand out, and he very slowly started to look over his shoulder. And I was never more embarrassed in my life, because I had to be the first person that ever walked up to say thank you to him.
You shouldn't be embarrassed for that.
I felt embarrassed for everybody else in
That's
the
right.
world.
For everybody who did not say thank you.
Right.
Right.
All right, here's a man that's spent his whole life protecting this country, and nobody could think of walking up and saying the words thank you to him. And then once again, the Veterans Court, trying to help people. Judge Brennan has done an amazing job. Mike made sacrifices when he was in Vietnam. I don't want to get into it now. And has helped so many veterans, and there can be no way that we can equate. We have a guy who's being prosecuted in Turkey because he badmouthed the president. They want to extradite him, a professional basketball player,
Right.
who can't go to Canada and couldn't go to London because they won't accept his passport because they have an arrest warrant for him. It's inconceivable to me that what we take for granted, that people have paid for with their blood.
Right.
And sometimes even more than blood, PTSD, addictions, things like that, and their family members. There's people, friends of mine, many of them are Navy SEALs, their family don't see them for 8 months out of a year. You know, and they got to raise the wife has to raise the children on their own. All right? These are the sacrifices they put up with. You know, I just, it's inconceivable to me that we don't take more account of, I mean, you see all these marches now against, you know, uniforms and things like that. I mean, I was in Charlottesville during the riots. I just won a major case that day. It was a disgrace that the woman got killed 20 feet away from me. And the National Guard was there for the whole day, and they did nothing. I don't know. But all I can say is, you know, I can't thank you enough, you know, for giving up your time, and I think it was quite informative, and will raise more questions that, you know, that need to be answered. So I'm leaving it off now, you know, saying that, once again, that this is, you know, Memorial Day. And the word memorial is that it's a memorial for the people that have based their lives so we can have our country. We're supposed to memorialize them. All right? So we take the time. I don't know if you pray or if you don't pray, but if you do pray, take the time to say a prayer for all our service people, wherever they are in this world. Even if they're not in the service anymore, they still need your prayers, and they still need your thanks. All right? And I thank